Great. So welcome back we're back from our break. And so the committee is shifting gears a little bit, using another transportation metaphor. But H38 is a bill that has been introduced and is in our committee. It's an act relating to the use of a portable electronic device in a non-hands-free mode while operating a motor vehicle. And we got an introduction of this with the sponsor of the bill, Representative Shaw. And so we wanted to pull this off the wall just to have a walk through of the language with our attorney, and then to hear some testimony from the perspective of law enforcement on this. So I think that's just a grounded one. And so we have some of you, we have the language on our website, and I know I have a printed copy. The members have a printed copy. So make sure everybody is looking at the same thing. So welcome back, Andrea.
So for the record, Anthea Dexter Cooper from the Office of Legislative Counsel. Thank you for having me in this afternoon. I am going to share my screen, and I'm going to show you the two things that Jeannie had posted under my name for this bill for today. The first is, and if you look under my name, you'll see there's one that says H38 as introduced and H38 annotated version. So the as introduced version is going to be the one without highlighting. So that's what's introduced. That's what the bill is. The annotated version, and I see a lot of you have it, is just a tool for purposes of this walkthrough to show you some of the moving pieces. So this bill makes it look like a lot of language is being struck and a lot of language is being added. Unfortunately, there's no great way to designate the movement of language within a statute. So one of the things that's happening here, in just sort of like the awkward nature of statute being amended, is there are three definitions in 23 VSA section 1095B, which is the sort of senior operator distracted driving statute, that are used in the section, but for some reason, only one of them is included in the definition subsection for the section in general. So this is kind of doing some technical cleanup to consolidate all the definitions into one subsection. So yellow highlighting indicates a technical change. And I tried to be very, very literal in technical change, nothing that, I think is sort of a technical-ish clarification change. These are just, there's no way to say this isn't a technical change. So for purposes of subsection A, changing definition to definitions plural, because there are now going to be more than one definition in this definition subsection. Moving the singular as used in the section hands-free is to its own subdivision, subdivision 1, not changing in any way the definition of what it means to be a hands-free use. It means the use of a portable electronic device without use of either hand by employing an internal feature of or attachment to the device. That is existing law. No changes are proposed there. Adding a definition of non-hands-free use, which is sort of going to be just the reverse of that. So non-hands-free use, and this is a substantive change because there's not a current definition of this in the statute, the use of a portable electronic device in any way that is not a hands-free use. So basically, non-hands-free use means non-hands-free use. It's anything other than using it in a hands-free way, including, and we don't in statute use including but not limited to, there's actually been a Supreme Court case on that. Including is just going to be representative examples of what non-hands-free use means. So non-hands-free use will include an operator of a motor vehicle holding a portable electronic device in the operator's hand or hands while operating a motor vehicle. And you'll notice there it doesn't talk about whether or not they are using it. So if you were just holding it because you like to hold it, that would then fall under this non-hands-free use if you were moving your motor vehicle. Operating, not a change in existing definition. This is just moved from later on in the section. And for your green pink and blue highlighting, I highlighted what looks like it's being added, and I highlighted what is actually being deleted. And for green and pink, they are identical. So there's currently in this section a definition for operating. You'll see that it's now being added to this subsection of definitions. Where it is being removed from is down on page 3 from lines 10 to 15. Public highway is being moved from lines 8 and 9 on that same page. And those are both being added up in the main definition section. No change there. So operating would mean operating a motor vehicle on a public highway, including while temporarily stationary because of traffic, a traffic control device, or other temporary delays. So if you're stopped at a light, that's still operating a motor vehicle. If, and this is operating does not include, operating a motor vehicle with or without the motor running when the operator has moved the vehicle to the side of or off the public highway and is halted in a location where the vehicle can safely and lawfully remain stationary. So that's going to be a distinction between you pulled fully over and you were stopped at a light. And I think you can hear from law enforcement about how that is interpreted in practice. Public highway means a state or municipal highway as defined in 19 VSA Section 1, Subdivision 12. And I heard Captain Davidson talk about why we don't use the Title 19 definition of highway in Title 23. So I'm very curious to see if this is something that he flags as something that maybe shouldn't be in existing statute. So I will just flag advance of him maybe flagging it for you. This is the Title 19 definition of highway, not the Title 23 definition of highway. And then securely mounted, no real changes here. In the existing language, what you see highlighted in blue being struck from below, securely mounted means the device is placed in an accessory, just adding portable electronic device to be clear about what device it is. And then existing statute goes on to say, is placed in an accessory or location in the vehicle other than the operator's hands, plural, and this language adds hand or hands to track other instances where it talks about one or more hand. So to try and be clear that it doesn't mean other than holding it in both of your hands, it could be holding it in one, the other, or both. Where the device will remain stationary under typical driving conditions. And then for purposes of the balance of the language that you're going to see, I didn't highlight any of this to say that it was a technical. It's just saying very clearly that what is prohibited is using the portable electronic device in a non-hands-free use. So what currently is the subsection heading, use of a handheld portable electronic device prohibited, would say use of a handheld portable electronic device in a non-hands-free use is prohibited. And then in the pertinent subdivisions, inserting in a non-hands-free use both times. So an individual shall not use a portable electronic device in a non-hands-free use while operating a moving motor vehicle in a place open temporarily or permanently to the public or public or general circulation of vehicles. In addition, an individual shall not use a portable electronic device in a non-hands-free use while operating a motor vehicle on a public highway in Vermont, including while the vehicle is stationary, unless otherwise provided in this section. So that's going to get to your operating does not include piece. And then we've just got some technical corrections using the lowercase 2. I'll not bore you as to the why. And then providing, I think, some additional clarification on what it means to activate or deactivate hands-free use. And that is only something that you are allowed to do. The prohibitions do not apply, so it's permitted if while you are activating or deactivating the hands-free use, the handheld portable electronic device is securely mounted in a way that does not require the handheld portable electronic device to be held in the hand or hands of the operator of the motor vehicle, and provided that any accessory is not obstructing the windshield in a violation of existing law. And that's going to be it. The balance of it is just moving some language we saw previously and making some technical corrections. So I would say what you have going on here is a lot of movement of language, the consolidation of the definitions in one place, consistent phrasing around non-hands-free use, which is a newly defined term, and some other technical corrections throughout.
I think we have a couple of questions. I see Representative Burke and then Representative Dawes.
I just have a quick,
Sorry.
sorry. Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, you please go.
So I'm just curious, so is this something that came up that you noticed and people were, is this to try to emphasize it that people cannot hold their.
This was, President, this was originally brought to me by a member of the Governor's Highway Safety Council. Had told me that there was a problem in the courts, and I think you might hear later. People say they were not using their handheld device. They weren't talking on the phone. Maybe they were playing with a app or other things, but so this is,
It just makes it more specific.
makes it clear.
Okay. Because I remember when we did the first of the legislation.
That was the first time we did the legislation. Yeah. So this, I hope this closes a maybe possible loophole.
So that's great, because we always want to say, what is the problem that we're trying to solve? So, but that's great. So Representative Dodge.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask if, so it says, that you can't use it, operating, sorry, page 2, and then you've got in the green, it says, line 8, operating means operating on a public highway, including while temporarily stationary because of a traffic control device or other temporary delays. And I was just wondering, I know it's rare in Vermont probably, but certainly there have been times when there's a bad accident and you're stuck for a really long time, if they're thinking like the Bolton Flats or, crazy snowstorms where you're, I don't know whether we have to further define temporary delays or whether it's obvious that if you're stuck behind an accident that you can pull out your phone to figure out what's going on, or does that have to be?
So I would say it is not obvious that that is permitted, because I would say that that is a question to ask law enforcement as to whether or not they're interpreting this to mean that. I would say that this operating definition is sort of clear in operating means if you're temporarily stopped, but operating does not include operating a motor vehicle with or without the motor running when the operator has moved the vehicle to the side of or off the public highway and is halted in a location where the vehicle can safely and lawfully remain stationary. In that instance that you described, they have not pulled off to the side of the road. So I think this is going to be something that is interpreted by law enforcement. If you want specifically to say that that is not operating, if you want to say operating does not include and then list multiple things out, one of which was when, stopped for, I don't know how you describe the length of time that the stop is for, how long does the accident need to, be in existence for you to be able to pull out your phone and use it. If you need to turn your vehicle off, this does have language about pulling over to the side, whether or not it's on or off. So I think that if that is a situation you want to address, it probably is something that there needs to be more clarification on in statute, unless law enforcement can tell you definitively this is how it's applied. There's case law that's interpreted this way. I don't know of that case law.
Representative Campbell.
Is texting addressed somewhere else?
Yeah, Section 1099 addresses texting. So your distracted driving statutes are going to be 1095A for, I call them the junior operators, the 1095B, your senior operators. The difference there is whether or not you're allowed to use your phone in a hands-free use versus whether or not you're not allowed to use it. And then texting is addressed in 1099. And then there's a separate section that deals with commercial vehicles and using a phone.
I think what we're trying to address is the issue of people looking at the phone, right, and texting. I mean, that's sort of the Exhibit A case of somebody paying attention to the phone rather than driving.
Yeah. So 1095 B, the language that you have here also would prevent someone from, holding the phone to their ear.
Right.
It would also, and I think this is an area where this is providing some clarification. Maybe you used your phone and the Bluetooth to like activate the call, but then instead of using it on your the speakers of your car, you're holding the phone in your hand, maybe so it's closer to you and it's on speakerphone. I would say that is also something that's being addressed here. So I would say that Vermont statutes do not exclusively address distracted driving in the I am looking at my phone or I'm texting on my phone way. It's broader than that in the different sections that address it.
Yeah, so for the example, using the phone on speaker, I know my daughter's phone, or car does, you can't really hear what she's saying when she's using it on the car speaker. So, but using it on speakerphone, using the phone, the device on speakerphone, you can hear what she's saying. In other words, the mics in the car aren't good. But that, it seems like the kind of situation that isn't really any more dangerous than holding a coffee cup, really, and talking to somebody in the car.
I'm gonna say that is a policy decision for all of you to make.
I know. I'm just thinking about it.
Well,
Representative Pouch.
and just thank you, to clarify what Representative Campbell is saying, you could do, this isn't stopping you as long as it's hands-free the entire time to use the speaker on the phone.
Yeah, it could be
You just can't
mounted.
hold it, right.
So long as it's mounted in a way that doesn't obstruct the windshield in violation of statute. But if it is mounted, you don't have to use your hands to hold it to start the call. I think there's a legal way
Yeah.
to use the
And then
speakerphone feature on your phone while you're driving.
and all the cars have screens in them now, and they're distracting as well. I don't know.
So
It's hard.
I just want, because we do have, I think that we do want to have some time to ask questions of law enforcement. So I might just suggest to the committee that if we have questions about the language, Anthea is here sitting out, but I know that there might be some other questions about so I don't want to shut anybody down, but we do have some folks who can answer some of the law enforcement concerns. But Representative McCoy, I think you had a question.
Well, no, I was securely mounted. I don't have a mount for my phone. I just stick it in the coffee cup.
Are you?
And then I use the knob on the wheel to answer the phone.
So nothing says that your phone needs to be securely mounted in your vehicle. It says that if you are going to be using it in hands-free,
Okay.
then
I'm
it
okay.
needs to be mounted. So it is one of the exceptions.
Okay,
But I mean, your phone could be in your purse, it could be in your cup holder, so long as you're not
holding it. Okay, okay. So sure, I'm okay.
Yeah, they're not breaking the law.
So where you're gonna get the usage of your securely mounted definition is the prohibition of this section shall not apply to activating or deactivating of a hands-free use, provided that the handheld device is securely mounted. And then the other place where securely mounted is used is any accessory for securely mounting the device is not affixed to the windshield. And then the use of a global positioning or navigation system if it is installed by the manufacturer or securely mounted in the vehicle in a manner that does not violate section 1125 of this title. So another exception would be is if you're using your map device on your phone and it's securely mounted.
I saw Representative Bartholomew.
The answer you gave to Representative McCoy doesn't seem to, what's said here doesn't seem to be the same thing. On page 2, line 16, securely mounted means a portable electronic device is placed in an accessory or location in the vehicle, okay, other than the operator's hand, okay, or hands, where the device will remain stationary.
So that's a definition.
You put it into the cup holder, it's stationary, it's not in your hand, so it seems like that then would be considered securely mounted.
So
That's what you said.
Nothing says your phone needs to be securely mounted in your vehicle. It just says, this is the definition of securely mounted for how it's then used in the balance of the section. So in Representative McCoy's instance, she's never like touching her phone in any way. So it doesn't really even need to look to some of the exceptions for whether or not securely mounted matters. So I would say if your phone is securely mounted, only matters if you're then going to be, touching it or looking at the map on it. I think there is potentially a question for law enforcement if someone has their phone in their cup holder and they're looking down at it to see if there's a map on it, whether or not that falls under the
Well, that's my point. By securely mounted, this definition means that you have in the cup holder, it's securely mounted.
Okay,
That's what that definition says to me.
So is your question then one of, if your phone is in your cup holder, can you look down at it for purposes of using GPS?
Yeah. I mean,
I have not thought about it. I can think about it, but I can tell you that that is not something that is changing in H38.
So,
am I making my point though?
so the idea here is you cannot have a phone in your hands.
Right.
That's the idea. So
Right.
I'm hoping that we can get
Yeah.
the experts beyond Anthea, who's an expert.
But that's been one of my issues is
I think
I
you're
would
raising a
argue-
different issue.
No, but I would argue that I'm probably safer holding my phone here where I can see the road than if I'm looking down and it's sitting in my
Well,
cup,
I
securely mounted to my cup.
I might take an issue with that, John.
Well,
So,
I can't read the phone in my cup holder very well.
so,
You shouldn't.
so I went,
That's texting violation.
I'm not talking about texting.
Anyway,
so to
Yeah.
Representative Shaw's point, I think we'd like to get our other guests would be covered. And Anthea, you're gonna be,
I will stick around unless I am summoned to Senate Finance, but I am gonna.
right, you might have to.
Yeah, but I'm just gonna email the committee assistant and say that she should email me if I'm needed, but otherwise I'm gonna stay up here.
Okay, terrific. Well, great. So, I'd like to welcome back to the committee Captain Scott Davidson and Lieutenant Revlin, and you have a colleague with you today. Are you all coming up? Do you all three of you want to come up, or what order should we do this in?
Whichever order, Trooper Hine was actually the one that aided in the review of the bill. He
Great.
has yet to participate in the committee, so I invited him along since.
Welcome to the committee. So, I mean, I think it might make sense, if it's okay with you, do you want to go first? Or do you want,
I'm gonna go instead of Chris, but you can go first.
okay, great, well. So, Captain Davidson, welcome back.
Oh, it's good to be back. Scott Davidson, Department of Motor Vehicles. Hey, I got good news. I'm a solution guy here today. I actually have some recommendations, and I'm not going to be a naysayer. I'm going to be very positive. The intent of this bill is great. It's good. Reason I say this is exactly what I testified to last time. There's nothing that challenges law enforcement more than creating bills that have ambiguity or doubt or are unclear. I'm not going to stop the vehicle and issue a ticket unless I feel it's a violation. And if there's any wiggle room or doubt, I'm not likely to issue it, not even likely to stop for it. So what has come up with this specific section is law enforcement officers are stopping folks for using the phone, doing this, right? And then they're getting to a hearing and the person's saying, well, I was just holding it, I wasn't using it. There is no way in the world the officer can prove that that person was using the phone, driving like this on a road, but they can say the person was holding a phone like this, right? The bill needs to say you can't hold the phone, either in the left hand or the right hand, in any hand for any purpose. It shouldn't be the burden of law enforcement to prove that they were using it. It shouldn't be a defense, because there's no way an officer is going to be able to seize a phone. We don't have the authority to do that, to go into it and say, yes, you were, here it is. We can't do that. So with that being said, to clean up that language is important. It's just got to say you can't have the phone in either hand. Okay. So if you take a look at federal funding, because the state of Vermont does receive federal funding underneath 23 CFR Code of Federal Regulations, 1300 underneath the FAST Act, NHTSA money. So all the money that we put towards safe roads, enforcement, education for distracted driving comes from NHTSA. That's where that federal money comes from. With that, they do have a requirement that the state of Vermont does in fact have a law that quote says, prohibit a driver from holding a personal wireless communication device while driving. It's that simple. Shall not prohibit a driver from holding a personal wireless communication device while driving. That's it. Can't have it in your hands. Left hand, right hand, either hand, no hand. So what I offer you with this bill is great direction. Love to see the attempt at the clarification, but I'd like to offer a couple suggestions if I may. Number one, take the word use out of hands-free use if you're trying to say not using and just holding, because that creates ambiguity, right? Why would you put a word use in something that you're defining as they're not using? Just hands-free, cannot be in either hand. So that the first suggestion is just with the language. Just make it as simple as saying, shall not have one while driving, just like the federal law states. And then the two other areas came up, and I testified this at Senate as well. The ambiguity piece, once again, when you put into a bill a different definition for every statute, it creates problems. So why would you have a different definition for highway than is already stated in Title 23 under definitions, Section 4, subsection 13? Highway is already defined in Title 23. Why would you include another statute definition in Title 23? That just creates confusion because now officers have to decide, well, what definition for what law, and it should be one, and it should be consistent with Title 23. The second one that comes up with is, that's public highway. So the next one is operation. So again, this bill recommends what the definition of operation is. And again, that's already defined in Title 4 under subsection 24. So now you're creating another definition for something that's already defined in Title 23. Now, I understand the meaning for it because what they're doing is they're allowing people to pull over to the side of the road where they legally can pull over to the side of the road. And underneath the current definition, underneath Title 4, that's still operation because they're still on a public highway. But rewording the bill maybe to have it could be a defense that if you pull over to the side of the road, come to a complete stop, et cetera, something to that effect, rather than create two different definitions, one for operation and one for public highway when it's already defined. Does that make sense?
I'm lost.
I think I'm a little bit like, could you just repeat it?
I think I was writing down what you were saying about use, and then you were already on.
All right, so if you look at the current bill, there is a section in here that
I think
defines.
we called the first 2 points. I think it's the third point.
About use.
About
I'm
use, yeah,
just
Title
trying to
4.
understand about the highways.
Okay, so if we go to Title 23, Section 4, definitions for Title 23. And that's what law enforcement gets taught at the Vermont Police Academy are the definitions. So if I stop somebody for driving under the influence, they're an actual physical control of a motor vehicle on a public highway when under the influence of intoxicating liquor or drugs. But there isn't a different definition for operation. There isn't a different definition for highway. It's the same, whether I'm stopping you for speeding, DUI, DLS, consistent. Shouldn't be different in any other statute. It should be consistent. This is public highway definition. This is operation definition. And those are laid out in 4. So in here, there is another definition for operation in 3, and there's a definition for public highway in Section 4. I would scratch them. That's my recommendation. You have definitions for those two already embedded in Title 23.
Representative Corcoran.
No, John.
Oh, sorry.
The definition for public highway is referring to 19 VSA though, so it's not redefined here. So evidently there are already 2 definitions of public highway.
So the definition of public highway as defined in 4, let's see here, I'll bring it up. 13, I'm sorry, give me a second. So highway, road, public highway, or public road shall include any parts of any bridge. This is the definition in Title 23 of public highway, and it is not the same as this definition. What I'm saying is it should be. It should be the Title 23, Section 4, subsection 13.
Background.
Yes, go ahead. We have some background.
Well, I mean, when we first passed this, I mean, and going back to your original, I'd say, not concern, but issue, I always felt that if you were stopped, you could pick up your phone and see where the nearest burger joint was.
Mhm.
I was able to get it out of this committee. We passed it, went over to the Senate. We couldn't get it. So the compromise was changing, and Professor Rania and Thea, we came up with a different definition of highway because we allow people, if you're in like a drive-through
Mhm.
or getting a coffee, and if you're stopped, you're allowed to do it there. You're allowed to pick up your phone. So that's why there was a different definition of highways.
This was a Helena thing, not an Anthea thing.
Yeah.
But I would totally agree with where I think you're going.
Yes.
Because the definitions in Title 19 are more like, this is road.
Yes.
Whereas the example that Captain Davidson gave in Senate Transportation when talking about the excessive motor vehicle piece was that the Title 23 definition is a bit broader and would cover things like parking lots.
But that's exactly why we did that, to appease, I'll say me, but the committee at that time.
Can we define it not as a definition, or can we place it in the statute rather as it can be a defense for this? Because we had this dialogue before, creating different definitions for every section, or which section's got what definition, creates a lot of ambiguity, and you're leaving that up to the officer now to determine, what definition do I use for this violation, rather than the one that's already in Title 23. Can it be worded to say it is a defense or it is permissible to pull over and do X, Y, and Z rather than calling it a definition? Because
Yeah, no, I was just giving you the background.
Does that make sense?
There were two different-
I understand, yeah,
Kind
it
of go
makes
back
sense.
to, you could use your phone while you're stopped.
And I'll
Really kill your bill.
Yeah, you really would.
I would find that.
But we could work on that, yeah.
But the background makes sense as well.
Yeah.
Because I understand why you have operation defined as it is, because we're taught at the police academy, operation is actual physical control, right? So if the car is running and I'm sitting in the front seat, I could be arrested for DWI, even if I'm not driving, because I am in actual physical control of that vehicle. But by changing this definition, I can sit on the road, side of the road, with a different definition of operation and not be in actual physical control. I could have it running and not be considered operation underneath this definition in this proposed bill. But do you see the,
Yeah, I see where you're
Yes.
coming from, but that was just a compromise.
I understand the purpose.
Yeah.
So you're just
Yeah.
moving it to the end of the bill, moving the.
Well, no, it was a difference of it had to do with,
This was a compromise.
this was a compromise.
Yeah.
The definition that is currently, like, as defined in 19 BSA, right? That's, okay. Anthea, yeah.
So I will just say that you are being given suggestions from a interpretation and a in practice perspective, but you as the writers of the law, as you made this decision several years ago, can choose to have a different definition apply for a particular section. It might just not be in practice, according to the people who have reading statutes, the best approach. I would say for purposes of recrafting it as a defense, I think we certainly could do that in language and words, but then I'm just gonna raise the fact that that's gonna be potentially viewed as like a change in the law, which maybe you don't want to be making, maybe you just wanna be trying to clarify this one piece. So maybe it's a conversation for a future point, if you, with your institutional knowledge, know that you made this choice intentionally.
Oh, no, it was intentional, yeah.
Your-
Yeah, it was definitely intentional, yeah. Yeah.
So I think I see a couple of other questions that Representative Dodge and then Representative Campbell.
Yeah, just on that, so it sounds to me like you're trying to make some exceptions but without having to redefine what public highway means. So the last section is all of the exceptions to this. So isn't that the place where you could add in, rather than redefining public highway, add in the types of roads that you would want to be accepted from?
You could, and I would phrase what Captain Davidson was saying as a defense is more of the law doesn't apply in this particular instance. It is permissible to do X, Y, Z. But what Representative Corcoran was telling you was that this is saying, setting aside what's an exception, this is a physical location where the prohibition applies to, And if you look at the definition of highway in Title 23 and the definition of highway in Title 19, they are not the same. And if you think about the purpose of those two titles, it makes sense. Title 23 deals with motor vehicles and where cars are going to go. Title 19 deals more with the maintenance of and the use of highways. And cars go places that aren't what you think of when it's like, this is a town highway, this is the interstate, this is US Route 5.
So as a older guy, been around 33 years, I don't stop a lot of cars, not anymore. I push paper, I testify in front of fine committees such as this. But if I'm driving down the road and I see somebody sitting like this, I don't have the ability to be able to look up Title 23 to find out what definition. Is that on a public highway? Is he operating? Is there an exception for this particular law? But what I do remember is when I went to the police academy, this is what I was taught. And for 33 years, this is what operation was, and this is what a public highway was. I'm going to stop a vehicle that is going to be an exception because I wasn't aware of it because I'm 33 years on the job and haven't worked the road in a while. And I'm going to be stuck in a pretextual stop, or I'm going to be in some situation now where I made a bad stop because I didn't know that this had a different definition. I don't want to be in that position. I want to stop cars based on the standard that I was taught, and it's consistent through Title 23. And then afterwards, if it's defense and I stop the vehicle and all that stuff, great.
Your perspective is important because I think that this bill aims to help with the enforcement of this law. So anyway, so I appreciate your point. And I see Representative Campbell set up and I see Representative Bartholomew.
Thank you. Just one observation that I asked Anthea where texting was in statute, and she pointed me to 1099, 23 VSA 1099, which also has the same definition of public highway. It refers to 19 VSA. So it's elsewhere in statute already. So make that observation.
But I would say out of a statute this big that we're expected to know, understand, and read, 99.9% of it is Title IV definition. Or Title 23, Section 4, 13 and 24 is the vast majority of what we do on a daily basis. Yeah.
Wanted to make that observation.
Oh, no.
Okay, Representative Bartholomew?
I have to ask the same question again because I don't understand. Can someone explain to me, public highway is not defined here. It's referring to a definition somewhere else in statute. So
it's a different definition than what's in Title 23.
Okay. So
I think this is best directed towards our attorney.
I'm not understanding why it's a new definition when it's somewhere else.
It's a different definition than what's in Title 23.
I guess, okay.
So Representative Bartholomew, if you didn't include what's on page 2, what's highlighted in pink, public highway means, then you would, under the rules of statutory interpretation, look to the definition of highway that would apply to all of Title 23, which is in 23 VSA Section 4. And what Patrick Davidson is saying is that if you struck out that pink highlighted language, then whenever you saw highway in the balance of the section or public highway, you would look to the definition in 23 VSA Section 4. The only reason that you need to reference a definition of public highway here is because there was a policy decision made to have a definition other than the one that is applicable to the balance of Title 23 apply. And that's what Representative Corcoran was telling you the history on. Does that help?
And what is the public highway definition in 19 VSA apply to?
I mean, it applies to Title 19. And it applies to places otherwhere in statute that it is referenced, such as 23 VSA Section 1099.
Okay. Thank you.
Does the committee have any other questions about, how, I just have some general questions like, up until now, has it been a problem to enforce this law? And maybe these are for Lieutenant Ramlin as well, but it just because it has not been clear what is, when cases go to court or that they're
There's-
being dismissed because there's a lack of clarity.
There's fact and there's urban legend, right? There's both, right? We hear that a lot. Law enforcement's a small community. We all chat, we all know each other. If I go to court and I lose a ticket because I couldn't prove the operation of this, that goes to the law enforcement really, really quick. We all know about it. And when we all know about it and we know that we got to go to court and prove operation, we're less apt to write a ticket. I mean, that's just human nature, right? Why would you want to go if you're going to lose? I can't prove that they're operating the use of that phone. And then it gets you into the situation, like I, as a law enforcement officer, I get two choices. Let's say I stopped you for using this phone and I said, were you using your phone? And you said, yes, I was. I'm sorry, my bad. I issue you a ticket. I stop you for using the phone and you lie to me and you say, I wasn't using the phone. But now I can't charge her, but I charge him and he's the honest one, right? That's the ambiguity.
There's a lesson.
We don't want that. What we want to say is there is no need to have this phone in your hand while operating a motor vehicle. There's none whatsoever. And that's exactly what NHTSA is saying, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. There's no need. It doesn't stop drool. It doesn't catch crumbs when you're eating, nothing. There's no purpose in having this in your hand driving a car. Okay.
All right, Representative Bartholomew, and then I do want to get to hearing from the lieutenant, and so.
You're proposing then you're not allowed to have the phone in either hand. Does that mean that we don't need any of this securely mounted language that's in here? Are you suggesting we drop that too?
We need that.
It would depend on how the language is. I agree with the securely mounted. Like, for instance, we all travel, right? And you take your phone, you put it in a mount and you put on Google Maps and it tells you where you're going. As long as it's securely mounted, and you should be able to do that. I think is what the reasoning behind that is, rather than having it in your hand and trying to manipulate it.
Okay.
But it could cover both, and that would be a question, I think, for your attorney, depending on how that's authored.
Other questions for Captain? Great, well, thank you for this, and you'll be sticking around for.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Until we're done with this, so, great, thank you so much.
This is great. I love this.
Great, well, great.
This is a good one.
Thank you, thanks.
There we go.
Representative Shaw appreciates that. So come on up, Lieutenant Ravlin, and appreciate you coming back.
My pleasure. Thank you for the invite.
Great, so, you're welcome. We invite you to, if you can just introduce yourself for the record, and then I just want to invite you to comment on any part of this bill or
Absolutely.
just how law enforcement is in some of any of the challenges and what this legislation may or may not help with.
Sure. Again, for the record, it's Acting Lieutenant Paul Ravlin of the Vermont State Police. I'm the Executive Officer of the Special Operations Unit, which encompasses Traffic Safety Division. And I appreciate the invite to come down and speak in front of the committee today. I echo a lot of the same issues that were brought forward by Captain Davidson about defining the word use and how we can clarify that better for law enforcement on the side of the road. So when we do make a motor vehicle stop, the operators frequently become very well versed in the law, and they know what they can try to argue and what they can't try to argue. It's sometimes very entertaining, but oftentimes it comes down to, I wasn't using the phone. Just a couple of days ago, I was at a red light. We had some comments about can the vehicle be stopped and not be driving. I was at a traffic light. I could see in the rearview mirror the vehicle in front of me. The operator was not looking at their phone or at the road. They were looking down at their phone. I could see their eyes were down. The light turns green. I said, let's wait and see how long this is going to be. So I'm waiting behind her. It was about 12 seconds before the operator realized that they could go. They drove, and as they're driving, the frequency of up and down was more so down than up. It was just a quick up check and back down. I turned on my blue lights. We traveled approximately another quarter of a mile before they realized I was behind them with blue lights. I didn't hit my siren. I just wanted to see how much awareness they had of their surroundings. They pulled over. So my question was framed in such a way, because I know some of the challenges we're facing in the court was, were you texting or watching a video? And the response was, I was checking my email. So those are the things that we're seeing on the side of the road. So now, without that admission, I wasn't doing anything. No ticket could be issued, right? Because she wasn't operating the phone while driving or using the phone while driving. So just framing the word differently, that was a requirement by me because I know some of the challenges we're facing by having to prove that that phone is actually in use at the time that the person was not just listening to the music or just hanging on to it for security purposes or whatnot. So I too am in support of, with the bill review, we are in support of having the word, the definition of use maybe expunged from the report and just say hands-free in general. Like if we say use, there's a use and not use. If we say hands-free, it's taking away all that ambiguity. It's just saying it's hands-free. So that's some of the stuff recommendations that we're making, and that'll clear up the language for us to say. I know there's some discussion about the highway definition, and there was some questions earlier about traffic being stopped for an extended period of time on the Bolton Flats, which it does happen. It happens. Okay. So there are some definitions and explanations and where people can pull over, certainly on the side of the interstate, as opposed to like a secondary road, pulling over for emergency purposes only. So what we've done is we've gone out to some neighboring states. So like New York State has defined in their language that any lawful order or direction of a police officer shall not be presumed to be using such device in that manner. So for example, if law enforcement has shut down the interstate due to a bad traffic crash and they're not allowing vehicles to pass through, that would temporarily halt the flow of traffic. It would be unlikely that the person would then be in violation of this law because they've been ordered to stop and they're stopped for an extended period of time, upwards of 35, 40 minutes. It would be unlikely that you'd then be charged with that. Secondly, it's very infrequently that you would have law enforcement walking down the lines of stopped traffic to be like, oh, you're using your phone. So in practice, it's not very likely. So the overview scope of this, and I can appreciate us getting down to the finite details of these and the definition of 19 and 4 and all this, but the overall reaching goal of this is to reduce traffic crashes and injuries, right? It's the safety aspect. And I'll give you an example. So Vermont State Police alone in the last 13, 14 months has issued 447 traffic tickets and warnings for cell phone use of portable electronic devices outside of a school or work zone. 447. Okay.
Since
since January 1 of 2022.
Okay.
Okay.
And that's just in a school?
That is outside of a school and work zone. So it's a different penalty when you're inside a school or work zone. We've issued 11 PED, which is a junior operator license holder, operating a portable electronic device outside of a school or work zone. That's 11 for junior operators since January of 2021. And this is just VSP alone. And those are tickets or warnings combined. Also, a use of a portable electronic device in a work zone, we've issued one of those. And we know that we've also had serious injury and fatalities within these work zones for people not paying attention, right? These workers are being, they're working next to vehicles traveling 55, 60 miles an hour. Use of a portable electronic device in a school zone, 7. And then texting while operating a moving vehicle. So that's a little bit more of a challenging thing to prove because they have to tell us they're actually texting versus holding it up, right? We issued 36 of those since January 1st of 2022. So it's an issue out there. This is a fraction of what's actually happening. We can all, on the way down here, I would have been late, right? So it's happening. So we're all for this. And I appreciate the conversation and the detail that's going into having these things, really solidified so that the police officers can do their job.
Great, thank you for that. I think we have a couple of questions. Representative Burke.
I had a question, but this reminds me that we have a friend who was killed on a bicycle in Northampton, right on the Main Street, because a woman was she was FaceTiming on her phone. We rode through a stop sign and hit him, killed him. And she had a 1-year-old child in the back. So, just sad stuff, you know.
It is. Driving has many divided attention requirements for us. 2 of the 3 standard field sobriety exercises are divided attention tests. Okay, so the first thing that we are all certified in doing with DUI enforcement is do standard field sobriety exercises. 2 of those are divided attention. Clearly, if we're, and the questions came up about, can I have it in my hand? The speakerphone and so forth. Our Title 23 section 1095B down in letter 3, section B says to activate or deactivate a hands-free use as long as necessary, as long as any accessory securely mounted to the device is not affixed to the windshield. So we're talking about activating and deactivating. It's not manipulated in any other way. We're not answering texts. We're not answering cell phones or emails. It's to activate it or deactivate it. So that's when it has to be stationary and not moving around. So the argument of it, and it says not affixed to the windshield. So if we're saying that it's in I turn on my Spotify or my podcast and I put it in my cup holder and I'm driving and I'm just listening to it, you're good to go. If you're starting to manipulate the phone to turn it off or turn it on, then you could be construed that you're violating that securely mounted hands-free device, correct? Like if you're starting to do it when it's not affixed to a stationary object, then you'd be in violation of this technically. I'm not sure if that answers your question from earlier.
No, Representative Bartholomew was trying to nail this down. If it's in the cup holder, is that securely mounted? And it sounds like you're saying, no, it's not.
It's so it says affixed, I believe there's a section affixed to a stationary, do we have it? Yes.
So the accessory needs to be affixed to the windshield. I think the point of interpretation for Representative Bartholomew's question would be whether or not if it's a location in the vehicle. So securely mounted means the portable electronic device is placed with an accessory or location. And or location is an existing law in a vehicle other than the operator's hand or hands where the device will remain stationary under typical driving conditions. I think location is maybe not the right word if you don't want things in cup holders to be insecure.
You could buy the weather tech that sticks in the cup holder.
And or location is the existing law at the very end of the bill, the very end of the statute.
So
Okay, so yeah, so I'm the areas that I'm sorry, I apologize, and it's certainly from recommendations of other laws that I have read from other states that specify it must be to a fixed stationary within the vehicle. So for example, we've had some troopers where the person has affixed it to their steering wheel in front of them. So it's technically hands-free and it's not, but it's now directly in their line of sight because it's affixed to their steering wheel. So some other states have addressed that and saying it must be affixed to a stationary object that doesn't move. So for example, you cannot affix it to your steering wheel because your steering wheel is not stationary. So those are some of the things that we see as challenges staying on the side of the road at 2:00 in the morning in a snowstorm, right? These folks are always trying to find the clear definition on what they're using and not using and how they're stationary and not stationary. So, and I apologize, I was mixing our current statute up with other statutes I have read for examples.
Okay, so Representative Bartholomew?
Well, and so that is my point about the way this bill is written, is according to this, the cup holder, the device remains stationary under typical conditions. So therefore, the cup holder is securely mounted by that definition, the way it's written. That's the way I read that, and I don't know how else it could be interpreted.
Yeah, so Anthea, yeah.
So I would say that when there's a question of, so I think or location is probably a word that you want to remove from the definition of securely mounted. If you want to clarify whether or not a cup holder, putting your phone in a cup holder is securely mounted. You might need to define accessory if you think that that's something that there needs to be clarification on. and that is existing law. So, I don't know what law enforcement is currently doing about someone saying, my phone is securely mounted because it's in my cup holder. I would also say that there is a place to argue that it is not stationary because it's moving back and forth when you turn your wheel and it will shake back and forth a little bit inside your cup holder. I think that's an argument that a lawyer who was trying to prosecute a case like this might make. But to the extent that you think this definition is ambiguous and is not, is allowing too much latitude in where a phone can be for purposes of meeting the definition of securely mounted, you can change it, but nothing says, it needs to be securely mounted, it's just when the exceptions apply. And I don't know if you would really be able to have your phone in your cup holder and without, are you gonna be able to use your finger to activate and deactivate it while it's in your cup holder? It might not be applicable in the balance of the statute for where the exceptions apply. But I'm happy to work on a narrower definition of securely mounted if the committee wants to.
So I guess Lieutenant Ravelin, you said, I just want to be sure that I'm hearing your response that if a handheld device, if a phone, let's say a phone is in a cup holder and you're not using it, not touching it, that is, in your view, just as good as if it's mounted securely because it is hands-free.
It's not being utilized in any way by the operator.
Yeah. So we could wordsmith this a lot, and I'm sure we could do that. But I think what I'm suggesting from what I'm hearing from you is that the point is that whether it's securely on somebody's dashboard or windshield or in a cup holder, that's safe, right?
So what I
Or do you have an opinion about the cup holder?
So in general, it's I don't want to lose the 10,000-foot view of this, is that we're trying to get folks not having portable electronic devices in their hands while they're driving. That's the big overreaching arch of this, right? So then we get into the second layer of this is if they receive a phone call, how can they activate or deactivate that? And the safe way that I would anticipate that to happen is we use our controls on our steering wheels for more late model cars, or it's securely affixed in such a way where you can push, accept, or decline. That, in practice, to me, as a safety would be the easiest way to enforce. Now, I don't think in practice law enforcement is pulling a car over and then being, oh, by the way, that's not as securely affixed. It's in your cup holder. Here's an enhanced ticket, or here's another ticket, or it's not. At the end of the day, it's someone with a phone in their hand. They're not paying attention to their driving. They're emailing, texting, calling. And that's the biggest issue that we're seeing with these, with all these violations that we're just stopping for. I didn't have the data for the crashes related to these things and the folks that are being impacted by this extensively. So the 10,000-foot view is hands-free. And then we get into, I would say, throw back to the committee, is defining how that is secured within the vehicle. Does it get to a point where it says it must be securely fastened to a non-stationary holder within the vehicle, or does the cup holder suffice? I would argue that the more secure that is, where someone doesn't have to look down at the cup holder and attempt to try to push the button to turn it on and turn it off, which is, by our current definition, is the only way you can manipulate your phone while you're driving. So that I don't know if that clearly answers your question, but that's kind of how I view it.
Representative Shaw?
So, thanks. By the way, Representative McCoy, there is a device that will go in your cup holder.
I have it right here.
Stem that will
Other
hold
check.
in your cup holder.
I looked it up.
Okay.
We're all Google.
Representative McCoy is going to have to change her ways.
I don't use it because I have the newer model. That's the.
Oh, I see. You don't have to reach down.
Okay, folks. Representative Shaw has the floor right now.
My real question for Robin is the ambiguity in the existing law make you do your job differently when you're stopping somebody for a violation of non-hands-free use?
It's more challenging when we have to more or less have the admission of the operator that they were actually not just hanging on to it for a security reason or by habit. As mentioned earlier by Captain Davidson, it's not the person driving and being comfortable with it. It's like the person that's honest usually ends up with a ticket. The person that's not honest, I'm left to be at the mercy of the courts, which have found that in lieu of a admission by the operator, it's hard for us to prove that they were actually using the phone while operating.
Conversely to that, would you do your job differently with this new language?
It would certainly make it easier. It would certainly make it easier.
And Representative Bartholomew.
I was just going to point out, we keep talking about cup holders, but some cars actually have places to, you can set your phone on a flat surface and charge them.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's not just cup holder.
Right.
I was also curious, what about other devices? Are there any data on traffic collisions, incidents? For example, a smartwatch. So you get a text message, your wrist buzzes and you're there reading your watch. You know, it's not a phone. Is there any information on, I mean, the world is changing and.
I have one.
Yeah, well, I do too. And so if I get a text from my wife, my wrist buzzes, what's that?
We certainly are.
Have we seen any problems with that type of device?
I don't have any of the wearable watches, or Garmin makes them. A lot of folks make them, Fitbit, everything, as far as how that data gets put to our wrist, and I don't have that data for you. It has been a constant issue prior to all this immediate information that we receive with electronic devices. It was laptops, and it was eating sandwiches on the way to work. It was brushing my hair. It was, so we frequently see distracted driving. And someone mentioned earlier the difference between that and a soda bottle. When it comes back to divided attention, the soda in my hand doesn't require me to be thinking of other things than the multiple facets of divided attention that requires me to drive a car safely. When I'm immersed in a conversation, I might be thinking about that conversation, thinking about my destination, where I'm coming from. So it won't be necessarily what I'm focused on. So there is a little bit of a difference. There was another bill that was reviewed earlier where some suggested language in another bill altogether was adding anything that would distract the driver from operating the mechanics of the car safely. So for example, we see dogs all the time on the front seat. Multiple safety reasons that shouldn't happen. If there's a collision and the airbag goes off, that's pretty bad. If the dog is in front of them, there's many things where a live pet in your front of the driver would be a safety issue. So we are seeing these not just portable electronic devices. There are many things that divide our attention from driving.
I'm looking at any final questions. I mean, this is, I appreciate you're taking the time to review the bill, and Captain as well. It helps us in our work. And we know, I mean, all of us have been on the road where people, have been swerving. And I think I've seen to distracted driving, the comparison of drunk driving versus with text. I mean, it's like kind of a similar. So one of the questions that is a fun, maybe as I know we're trying to wind down, a final question, do you think that your ability to stop people and issue these tickets and be able to, issue tickets will deter people from doing this as an activity? Because it sounds to me that recently with the lack of clarity that you haven't been, maybe officers are not addressing this. So this will bring more clarity. And do you think it will, from your experience, will issuing a ticket, does that, deter somebody from doing something like that?
So there's a lot of studies behind, the deterrence. Are tickets the only way? Are warnings the only way? The officer discretion is certainly important in these situations. The current law offers for emergency situations where you can text and dial 911 if you see someone swerving or DUI. We welcome that because oftentimes that's how we get these reports in. So it's not a hard no. There are things built in that allows folks, if they see a car crash or something, they can call and they're not going to be in violation of that. I do think that with the work that is proposed here, that we would see an increased enforcement action by law enforcement that would, I think, lend to be more of a deterrent to folks that have adopted this as just their way of life. Driving down the road, I have a son that's going to be testing for his license in 2 months, and it scares me to heck, right? Because he's going to be now into this world, and the conversations we have about hands-free and all that is constant. Because on the flip side, law enforcement officers see the end result of these things, and that's thankfully oftentimes the public are shaded from this and shielded from these results, but we see the end result. So I do think that it would become a deterrent, and I do think that you'd see a greater enforcement action by law enforcement. Should it be more clearer that if you have anything in your hands, you are violating this section, and that's it. The ambiguity has gone away. The use word is gone. It's hands-free or not hands-free. That's it.
Okay, that's good to me. Well, I appreciate that. Well, so for the committee, I think we'll wrap up our committee time today, and we'll want to have some committee discussion about this, I think. But thank you for your time this afternoon.
Very helpful.
Thank you.
Very good suggestion. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate it. I'm down. It's a great time.
Great, thanks for being in the committee. So with that, I'll say we can end our live stream, and we'll be back